So the idea here is to see how participation can interfere with the big difficult decisions, which is a little bit the key of these 2 days of meetings, because yeah, when we talk about transferring a quantity of power, then we have problems in our systems. So many years ago, the municipality of Valsamoggia was created with a merger of 5 different municipalities. So there was a big decision to be taken. The idea came from the top, so from the regional government, accepting the proposal of the 5 mayors of the 5 different municipalities. But of course, this is something that brings a very huge impact on the life of everyone, and on the budget, on the balance, on the local organization of things, school, hospital, services for the citizens of every kind. So it was a very big, difficult decision. And of course, there was a huge polarization. So a part pushing for the merger and a part really pushing for not doing the merger, with a lot of different reasons. So we put together this citizen review, which is basically, this is the original document we brought to Holland, to Borders to Cross, as an example of what we were doing in 2012. Basically, this methodology is a part of the deliberative democracy methodology. And the idea is the technical passage we needed to do this merger was to have this referendum, which was not something bringing the final decision, but it was a way of consultation of the citizens, not binding the final decision on the result of the referendum, but the possibility. Now, this is a typical problem of our structural democracy, a referendum on something which is so complicated, because you have to try to understand so many consequences of something like that, what is really happening for citizens, what's going on after, which are the risks and so on, that a referendum is really a very poor way, even for a consultation, because the risk is people will vote on something they think about without really having the right set of information to make a decision, to make up their minds. So this is a methodology that asks to a group of citizens, statistically selected, to analyze the question of the referendum and give their opinion to the rest of the voters. So it's a very dangerous process for those that are putting the referendum in place, because this group is not under control of the parties, not under control of anyone. So basically, this was the methodology. We were in partnership with this Australian university. They are very, very advanced at global level on this kind of topic and experiment. Also because this was the second time in the world that somebody was brave enough to put forward this kind of approach, because as you can easily understand, it's very risky for the politicians, not only for the majority, so for the proponents in this case, but also for the opposition, because you really go through a very strong and not controllable process, and you will hand an opinion at the end. So we were very poor, because this kind of processes are very expensive. So instead of having a very large group, we collected a small group of 20 people. But as you saw in the video, already when you get to 10, 20, you improve quite a lot the capacity, the ability of the group to understand the problem and to produce a valuable output on that. So this was a randomly selected group and demographically balanced of citizens. So we sent invitation randomly, 840 invitation. A group responded. Within this group, we selected randomly again the participants to the process. So there was no way to control who was in the group on the side of the proponents or on or the other side. And then we planned for 3 days of work with them to explore the question and to write a final document to provide to the voters as an aid for their vote. So the idea is this group, after studying the case, says this and that, and this is for you, then you vote whatever you want, but you have more elements on which you can orientate your voting. And day one was dedicated to experts, so third part expert on the problem, explaining to the group all day all the different possibilities, consequences, risks, problems, benefits, and there was this series of people coming and explaining, because there were preparatory studies for the merger, so they brought all the results and everything to them. And the second day was for politicians, so different parties coming and trying to tell their story. And this was incredibly interesting, because the narrative that was used outside this space was a certain kind of narrative. But getting into this space, it was immediately changed by the politician participating. Because with this kind of group, you can't really tell stories. They make questions immediately, and they want good data and information on everything you say. So if you declare something, they ask proof for that immediately. So the politicians coming to this process were quite stressed and quite surprised by the fact that there was no possibility to tell the same story they were telling outside this kind of process. Everything was cleaned by the group, and this kind of group focused on the topic, and with good information coming from the first day, they were so surgical, I would say, on everything they asked, and they never forgive people with vague statements or promises or stuff like that. So the second day was completely dedicated to that. And I'm sorry, my mayor is not here, but it was part of this activity, and it was very shocked at the end of this experience, because of course you have to change your mindset completely and stop to be the politician narrator and be absolutely concrete and explain everything in very, very detailed way if you can. If you can't, you will leave it open, so you will leave the group with a lot of questions. So the third day was instead dedicated to civil society. So there was an open call to association, to organized group, to everyone who wanted to bring some propositions, some doubts, some ideas, the concerns to the group. So we had a number of these associations inscribed, and they brought their idea. And in the end, the final idea was to write this document to orientate, to inform the rest of the voters. And they decided in the group, they also wanted to vote. So at the end of this process, they wanted to do a simulation of the vote to see this group after 3 days, what was the result of the vote. And this was also very, very interesting because despite all the impression everyone had during the process, they were very, very critical. They were very bad in contrasting many of the good reasons to the merger. In the end, they decided to, with a vote by majority, to approve the idea, despite all the difficulties. So the document was produced, and there was an effect on media around everyone. And we have some interesting thing we can say at the end, that the speakers that came were quite impressed by the power of this group. The citizen, the participants, were really enthusiastic of the quality of this experience and the potential that can express. And we were quite happy about the way it went. Here you have some quotes from the group. They're not particularly very important. But what is more important is what emerged in the end. Nobody loved the final documents on both sides, because it was really centered on reality instead of centered on the different storytelling. And there were a lot of problem and criticity emerging for this kind of process. Everyone was very skeptical about this way to go. And we discovered that, of course, 3 days were not enough. And also, we discovered that in a small community, this can be dangerous, because some of the participants of the group, in theory, they were not public, the names during the process. But of course, in a small community, it's easy to discover who's participating. And they had people going at home, trying to convince them into in a direction or in another. So in the end, the merger was approved through the referendum. And all this experience went into the creation of the new statute for the municipalities. And in this new statute, we didn't know about sociocracy 3.0. It wasn't invented yet. But deliberative democracy went into the statute of the municipality as a way to make this kind of decisions. Okay, so what is interesting, after many years, more than 10 years, if we read this document, you discover that they were incredibly good in focusing on all the criticity, all the problems that we will have to face in the future. So the final conclusion, now that we have the understanding of the years that we experimented in the municipality, is that we really have very powerful tools. Even if the conditions weren't the best, we really have a very good potential when we need to make strong, difficult, with a big impact decisions in our community. And we can probably start thinking that we really can trust this kind of methodology.